After Jesus died, they put Jesus in a tomb and wrapped him with some white paper. They put a big stone around it and placed guards in front of the tomb to let nobody go in.
He was just waiting for the 3 days.
He's probably drinking soda while eating hot Cheetos.
He would probably play games like Candyland and then have a party by himself.
The Easter Bunny was hiding behind a tree. He probably went out there and just throw eggs everywhere, and then he's gonna say, "There's one money egg, so you better find it. You'll get some money."
3 days later, there was a big earthquake.
I think we should go away somewhere safe.
Psych, I'm getting out of here.
The earth is shaking. Run for your lives.
And the guards ran off because they got scared.
And then on Sunday, Mary and some of her friends came with some spices. But when they got there, the tomb is empty.
His clothes only was there.
Then an angel came and said,
"Don't be afraid. Jesus has risen from the dead. Go tell the good news."
Mary and her friends went and told the disciples.
She said, "Jesus has risen from the dead."
Guys, Jesus has risen from the dead. And the disciples didn't believe them.
No, that couldn't happen.
Jesus can't raise from the dead. I don't believe it until I see it. But all of a sudden, Jesus came, just was there. I am Jesus. I am the Son of the Lord God, and I am Jesus, your friend.
And then the disciples said, "Jesus, it's you! Yay! Jesus is alive!" Totes cool. Jesus, before he left to heaven, he said,
I have done what I have came to do. And then he risen, then he was going up to heaven. His disciples were crowded around him. The disciples said, "Holy guacamole! I can't believe Jesus really flew."
"That's awesome."
Now what? Let's go tell the news.
Well, he is risen. He is risen. He is risen indeed. All right. I don't know. That's kind of, I have 3 little kids, ages 7 and under. So that's kind of generally how they speak all the time. So when I show you things like that, it's just because I want to invite you into my world, because that's the language that I hear all the time. It's not very often where I'm not having to say, what did you say? What did you say? And finally, after like the 4th or 5th time, I have to just say, I have no idea what you're saying, because I cannot understand the words that are coming out of your mouth. So I thought I would share some fun perspective on Easter from the mouths of babes, right? Well, today is Easter. My name is Jimmy. I'm so glad that you could join us and be with us here this morning. A lot going on, a lot of things. We're starting a new series here this morning. And, when you think about this idea of playlists, right? Jesus was this master storyteller that always told stories about, different things that were going on. And then he would lay kind of these truth bombs afterwards, right? He would tell the story and the people would be like wondering, what's he talking about? We thought we were here to learn about faith or, learn about spirituality. And he's talking about goats and fishes and, shepherds and all these other things. Then he drops this spiritual bomb and they're dumbfounded, and he walks away, and, the world is changed forever. Well, in our culture, it's pretty natural for us to look to musicians and songwriters, and we look to the different people who make movies, right? It's kind of our storytellers. They create for us these different messages. There's different songs that I'm sure that you could point to at different points in your life that mean a lot to you based on the story that is presented and the time at your life at which you heard it. Well, what we want to do over the course of the next couple weeks and starting with today is look at some of these popular songs that maybe you've heard on the radio and kind of glean out of them some spiritual truths that we might be able to apply to our lives. And we're going to get that kick-started today with Easter. And when I think about my first major full-time ministry position, I went to school to be a youth pastor, and that was my heart's desire for as long as I could remember. And I got my first job down in Florida. Bradenton, Florida is kind of right there on the Gulf Coast, and it's this beautiful area. I tell you, if the youth ministry position wasn't enough to bring me there, the palm trees and sunshine would have done it all by itself, right? It's just a beautiful area, and at times I even got to kind of experience the lapse of kind of beach living. I lived right on some of the most beautiful beaches in the world for different periods of time, and it's just this amazing experience. When I got involved in this church, and I had this little, youth ministry group of probably about a dozen kids that wanted to be a part of what was going on. So we started to really pursue what is it that God wants us to be as a youth ministry? What is it that we're going to do? And gradually, the idea of being fun and entertaining was going to be secondary to, we're going to pursue what it is that God wants for us. And unfortunately, as a result of that, the youth ministry kind of began to dwindle, right? And I kind of got nervous and worried that here I am, usually youth ministry is measured by the size of your youth group, and mine is shrinking and not growing. God, what are you doing? I feel like this is what you've called me to do and be a part of, but something's not working. And then what happened is I began to see as the kids that I did have began to kind of take to heart this message and this attitude. And once this group that graduated, that shrunk from 12 to maybe about a half a dozen began to grow and began to do awesome things that I couldn't even imagine that would come out of young people. And it was amazing to me that God began to grow this group. And over the course of the next couple years, I kind of rode this wave of stardom as this group went from 6 to 12 and then to 50 and then to 100. And it wasn't too long after that we were hitting around 150 youth every week at our weekly program. People from different churches around the area would come to the program there to watch and to see what are you doing? What's the secret sauce, right? What game are you playing that's attracting all the kids, right? Because that's what it must be. And it was because we had this core group, this foundation of students that refused to just settle for being entertaining and being entertained, but wanted to pursue a relationship with Jesus. But it wasn't too long as the group began to grow and we began to experience all the success that things kind of started to get out of hand. Right, I found myself kind of the sole leader of this group with some youth leaders underneath me, but we started having, kids from non-churched homes and gangs starting to come, and it was, began that our weekly program kind of became a fight night, right, where kids would be in the parking lot and fighting, and we had to have security now on our weekly programs. And finally, I started to get exasperated. I'm like, man, if we're going to have this growing youth ministry with all these kids, then I'm going to need some help from the church, right? For one, I probably should be getting paid more than what I'm currently getting paid, right? Because I'm kind of like a big deal now. This is like rock star status. I should probably get some kind of additional compensation for what it is that we're accomplishing here. In addition to that, we probably should have some resources to make sure kids aren't killing each other in the streets on a Wednesday night, right? So I remember I was called to one of the elder meetings, to kind of give an update on all of the going-ons of youth ministry there at the church. And, I kind of worked up the nerve. What I was going to do is I had read this study online that talked about the average pay for youth pastors and the size of church and the youth groups. And I printed it out, and it had all these charts and diagrams and things that were for sure going to make my case for me and why I deserved more money. So here I am, going on 4 years working at this church, and I come into this meeting, and I kind of plop down my packet of information for each one of the elders, and they kind of look through it, and I present my case, and, you drop a pin in there and hear it vibrate throughout the room as I didn't really get much feedback, right? These guys weren't picking up what I was putting down, and I kind of started to sweat, and then they said, all right, thanks for meeting with us. We'll be in touch. We'll have our people call your people. And the next thing I know, about a week later, I'm being called back into the office there with all the elders, and they basically give me the option that I can resign and get some severance pay, or I need to quit. Right, for me, it's kind of the culmination of everything I had hoped and dreamed for: a growing youth ministry, tons of kids, stardom, fame. And I basically was going to be out on the road by myself, all the way across the country, no family, right? Nobody I could really go to. I just remember being in this deep, dark place of sadness, of depression, feeling like, man, is this it for me? Is this the end of the road? Is this the end of the line? Right, for some of us here this morning, there's a good chance that you may be feeling like it's the end of the road. Right? Things have been mounting up against you, the hits, the punches, and you have a million reasons that you could give to quit this morning. The season is all about that. It's the story of a bunch of followers of Jesus who on Friday saw the hopes and dreams fade away with a man who died on a cross. And they were left wondering, left thinking, is this all there is to it? Is this the end of the story? Is everything that we've built our lives around and our hopes and dreams on, is it tumbling to the ground today? A million reasons. So today is for those of you maybe here this morning who've ever felt like giving up. Or maybe even this morning you feel like you come this morning with this last chance mentality that if God's going to do something, he better do it quick because the road is getting shorter and shorter. Today is Resurrection Day and we celebrate life, but for some of you it may still feel like Friday. Right? Good Friday was this day filled with pain and death like we can't even imagine. Right? Dark, discouraging. And our prayer is that for you somewhere, if you're in that place, is that you will find hope and life this morning. In a place maybe where you have questions or you want to give up and you can't see these things in a new way, the reality is, right, the greatest breakthrough or blessings in life are usually on the other side of not giving up. Right? Think about it in your life. Think about different times when you pressed through and you didn't give up, and afterwards on the other side of this great pain and these great trials are some of the greatest breakthroughs, the greatest results. I think about just a year before that meeting when I was dating Chaslin, my wife, and we got engaged, and it was, a dream come true. Finally, my life goal of, bucket list getting married was checked off, and here was the woman I was going to spend the rest of my life with. And then things began to kind of unravel as there was tragedy that struck her side of the family, and her father was tragically murdered, and we kind of sent everything into this tailspin of questions and confusion. And you can only imagine what it does to the young mind and heart of a young girl whose hopes and dreams lie through her father. And even today, she still wonders, man, and wishes she had her father here. But the days began to grow darker and darker. As time went on, people kind of forget the pain and the impact that this incident had on her. But I was there with her, just watching her continue to kind of spiral down into this depression. And the church there made us postpone our wedding because they didn't feel like she was in a good place to get married. And again, just kind of adding more weight onto this already growing depression that was going on. And it really sent our relationship into this place where she handed me the ring back, and we kind of took this time off where we weren't sure we were ever even going to see each other again. And through the midst of fighting through all of these issues and counseling and pain, we came back together. And I tell you, here we are 3.5 kids later, and I wouldn't have changed anything for the world. My greatest blessing is my wife and my kids and my family and the things that we've been able to do together. I look at those things and they never would have happened had we not pushed through the pain, pushed through the hurt and the suffering to the other side. Some of the greatest blessings come just on the other side of wanting to give up or to give in. Think about it for a minute, right? Jesus says in the Gospels that we have this enemy. Somehow he's related to cats because he says he prowls around like a lion. So if you have a cat and you're a cat person, then we're going to have to pray for you this morning. But, right, Jesus says we have an enemy prowling around like a lion, seeking whom he can devour, who he can destroy, who he can take out. Now imagine, right, you're this person this enemy who's trying to bring people down and to destroy their lives. And your one goal is try to distract them and keep them from the purposes that God has for them. What would you do? What would be your strategy in this role? You probably relentlessly try to talk them out of it, right? You would constantly barrage them with negative things, lies. That's not true. It's never going to happen. Look at your circumstances around you. How could you possibly accomplish those things? On the other side of the trial you're walking through, that you're considering maybe this morning even giving up, and on the other side of that is the greatest blessing of your entire life. And the question is this morning is, are you going to allow the enemy to talk and beat you out of the purposes and the plans that God has for you here? Today is dedicated to those who feel like giving up and walking away. Our battle, Paul reminds us in the New Testament, is as Jesus followers, it's not against flesh and blood. It's not against each other. It's not against our, quasi-friends in Facebook that we're trying to win over in arguments. But it's against powers and principalities of this world, this enemy who's trying to destroy us. There is an enemy who hates God. There's a prince of darkness that hates the kingdom of light, and all the forces at his disposal will try to stop at nothing to keep you from the purposes that God has for you. And this is why when you feel like giving up the most, it's because you have an enemy trying to talk you out of what God has made you for. Because the most meaningful times in life are often on the other side of the greatest trials. If you're taking notes this morning or following along, I encourage you to write this down. Your enemy will give you a million reasons to quit on what matters most. Right? Your enemy will give you a million reasons. It may be someone, it may be a dream, it may be going to school, it may be even on God. But your enemy will give you a million reasons to quit on what matters most. But the truth here is this morning is you only need one reason to stay the course. You only need one reason. Right, this morning I've asked Brian to play our first song that we're going to be looking at here this morning called A Million Reasons. Come on up, Brian. And when I think about Brian playing the song, it kind of feels fitting as a young man. We just started to get to know him about a year and a half ago now. And I remember the first time he came to Forward Point here, we lost power at the church or in the building here, and we had to move everything upstairs into the second floor. And it's kind of, nothing like me as a planner. I have all the, the lights a certain way, and here we are. We have none of that stuff, and a pull-up screen, and him and Amanda come for the first time. And getting to know him since then, they've been coming back ever since and watching his stories. He's kind of gone through times with his hopes and dreams and his music and what he's wanted to accomplish and the pain that he's had to endure as a result of making decisions to put his family first and to put his relationship with God first. He's kind of felt some of these same ideas of, man, there's a million reasons to give up, but in the end, you only need one reason to stay. So, Brian.
You're giving me a million reasons to let you go. You're giving me a million reasons to quit the show. You're giving me a million reasons. Give me a million reasons. Give me a million reasons. About a million reasons. If I had a highway, I would head for the hills. If you had a dry way, I'd forever be still. But you're giving me a million reasons. Give me a million reasons. Giving me a million reasons. About a million reasons. I bow down to pray and try to make the worst seem better. Lord, show me the way. Turn all this worn down leather. I've got 100 million reasons to walk away. But baby, I just need one good one to stay. Head stuck in a cycle, I look off and I stare. It's like that I've stopped breathing but completely aware. Cause you're giving me a million reasons. Give me a million reasons. Giving me a million reasons. About a million reasons. And if you say something that you might even mean, it's hard for me to fathom which parts I can believe. Cause you're giving me a million reasons. Give me a million reasons. Giving me a million reasons. About a million reasons. I bow down to pray, to try to make the worst seem better. Lord, show me the way to cut through all this worn down leather. I've got 100 million reasons to walk away. But baby, I just need one good one to stay. You see that I'm bleeding. Stay. Can't you give me what I'm needing? Every heartbreak makes it hard to keep the faith. But baby, I just need one good one, good one, good one, good one, good one, good one. I bow down to pray. I try to make the worst seem better. Lord, show me the way to cut through all this worn out leather. I've got 100 million reasons to walk away. But baby, I just need one good one, good one. Tell me that you'll be that good one, good one. Baby, I just need one good one to stay.
So you may have recognized that song. It's a song by Lady Gaga. And for those of you who were here this morning who want to give up, right? For those of you who may want to walk away, for those of you who are here, right, and you hear the voice of the enemy telling you that it's time to quit, it's time to give up, it's not going to happen, you're wasting your time. Even though you may know God has called you and has plans for you, the voices are there. And hear the words of Jesus as he faced a very similar feeling here in John chapter 12, verse 23. It says, Jesus replied, "Now the time has come for the Son of Man to enter into his glory." Right? And we obviously know the story of what's about to come, and you think about this term, enter his glory. What he's about to experience and endure, to me, is anything, right? But glory is not the word that I would use. The pain and the torture and the abandonment that he's about to experience. But for him, he considers it this glory, this opportunity. And he continues on. He says in verse 27, he says, "Now my soul is deeply troubled. Should I pray? Father, save me from this hour." Right, this idea of Jesus being troubled about this task that lays before him. In some of the different gospels, it actually says that he was to the point of sweating blood. Right, this weighed on him and was tearing him apart. There's an actual condition where stress can cause your blood capillaries to actually explode and the blood to come out of your skin like sweat. Right, and the things that Jesus was about to experience and endure were causing him this stress and this burden and this feeling to the point of even sweating drops of blood. So he says, should I pray? Sometimes, right, it's not even about knowing how to pray or what to pray. It's just, should I pray? God, here I am in this moment. Should I pray? Because his heart says this, Father, save me from this hour. Is there any way that we can maybe go around what's about to happen? Is there any way that we can avoid the different steps that are going to lead up to what you've called me to do? Is there any other way? I know what's coming, and I'm just begging, is there some way that we can do this differently? I know I'm called to give my life, but the human side of me does not want what's coming. Does not want to endure what's about to happen. Is there any other way? There's going to be emotional pain as he's betrayed by Judas, a close friend that he's lived with and done life with for years. Right? And maybe you're here this morning and you've been crushed by a friend, betrayed or lied to or let down by the actions of someone close to you. There's going to be abandonment, right, as the rest of the disciples all flee and even, pretend like they don't even know him. He knows that there's going to be pain in the beating and the torture, where it's going to leave him beyond recognition, right? Where they're going to play games to see if he can prophesy on who beat them as he's blindfolded, and they're punching him with signet rings in their hands. Or as he's whipped with these straps of leather that had broken shards of bones designed to rip flesh off of his body, probably leaving internal organs exposed. Or just being nailed to a cross naked and gasping for every breath of air to stay alive, right? He knows that this is coming. And the human side of him says, is there a different way? Is there another possibility? Is there something else that we can do to accomplish what it is that you created me for? And perhaps even the worst experience of all of it that he would go through is something he'd never experienced before, the separation from his Father as the sins of the world came upon him. And really the only time we hear him cry out throughout the beatings and the torture and being nailed to the cross, he cries out, my God, why have you forsaken me? The one thing that seemed to hurt him the most was the separation from his Father. And in reading the story that seems to be even worse than the physical pain, this is probably the most lonely moment of the lowliest point of his life. And he says, should I pray? Can I pray? There may be a million reasons to walk away, but you only need one good one to stay. And then he continues on in verse 27. He says this, but this is the very reason I came. Right? The devil may give you a million reasons to walk away, but you only need one good reason to stay. But this very reason that I came, what is the reason that Jesus came for, right? Who did he come for? He didn't come for the righteous. He came for sinners. He didn't come for the healthy. He came for the sick. He didn't come for the religious people. He came to set captives free. And if you've ever felt ashamed of something that you've done, or if you ever felt dirty because of your sin, if you've ever felt unworthy because, maybe the story's always been you're unlovable or you're unwanted, Jesus came for you. This is the very reason that I came. And when everything human in him wanted to walk away, he stayed the course. Why? Because you just need one good reason to stay. It's amazing what you can endure when you have a reason behind it, right? The different things. Anybody in here do CrossFit? Any CrossFitters out there? Good, I'm in the right church. I'm a fit right in here, right? But you think about CrossFit people, it's amazing what they can endure when they have a reason, right? They get up at 5 a.m. and they're lifting up these tires that are like the size of small Honda Accords, right? And they're flipping them around. They're jumping off and on top of boxes like kangaroos and throwing these big weight balls off the wall at each other, right? Why? I mean, for first, it's because they probably aren't right in the head. But no, they have this motivation where they say, man, the payoff at the end is something worth everything, right? This is me when I used to do CrossFit back in the day. If you can put it up there, the picture. Someone who is trying to pay off a debt, right? There it is. That's me after my CrossFit phase. I grew out of it, though. Or you think of someone who is trying to maybe pay off a debt, right? So they're working 2 jobs, and the spouse is in school, and you got kids to get through college, and how do you do that? Well, it's for this reason that on the other side, I know that when we're working hard, it's going to pay off. I remember in Indiana when one of my students was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, right? This young high school kid and dealing with this adult disease. And what would begin to transpire is he'd have to go through all this chemo, and he literally, every day would have to stab himself in the abdomen with these injections. And you think, man, who would want to go through all that? Why would you do that? But when there's a vision for a cancer-free life, the reality is you can endure and you fight through anything. And that's what he did, and he beat it. Even when he came back and he went through it all a second time, he beat it again. Because when there's a reason on the other side, you'll go through anything. I think about having kids, right? And having kids over the course of 9 months, the little baby inside is assuming more and more control, not just over my wife's body, but over the family, right? As whatever she wants, she gets. And then you go and think about the delivery, and the delivery is this kind of series of screaming and shouting and other PG-13 scenes that we won't reenact here. And always, it's like the same thing with every breath. Man, I'm never doing that again. I'm never doing that again. She's screaming with every breath, right? And then what happens? As soon as she holds the baby, it's like, well, I suppose we could do that again. Right? There's something happens when you're holding that baby and you realize what it was all for. That, man, you'd be willing to endure it all over again. Why? Because you can endure. It's amazing what you can endure when you just have that one good reason. It's amazing what Jesus was able to endure when he had a reason. And I don't know who it is, but there's going to be something that you are going to want to walk away from. You're going to want to throw the cards in, and all you need is one good reason to stay. For some of you, there may be a vision for something, and now there's this opposition, right? You had this vision for what God wanted you to do, but now there's this opposition, and you took a couple steps forward towards it, and you were feeling great, but now it's even more steps backwards, and you're left wondering, man, should I just give up on this? And this morning, you just need that one good reason. Maybe spiritually you had this time in your life when you really needed God to come through, and you prayed, and maybe you fasted, and you did all these things that you were supposed to do, and it didn't happen the way that you needed it to. So forget it, man. Maybe I'll just walk away from this. It doesn't work. But your enemy will give you a million reasons to walk away, and all you need is one good one to stay. What was it that kept Jesus going, right? The author of Hebrews tells us exactly how he was able to do this. He says in Hebrews chapter 12, he says, for the joy set before him, he endured the cross, right? For the joy. Scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary, right? For the joy. Somehow Jesus had this joy. Your enemy will give you a million reasons to walk away, but all you need is one good one to stay the course. Listen to those lyrics again. It says, I bow down to pray. I try to make the worst seem better. Lord, show me the way. To cut through all his worn out leather, I've got 100 million reasons to walk away, but baby, I just need one good one to stay. Jesus just needed one good reason to stay and endure. And do you know what his reason was? It was the joy set before him. What was the joy? All right, don't miss this. You are the joy set before him. Jesus needed one good reason to stay, and you were his reason for the joy set before him. In one of his own stories, he talks about having 100 sheep, right? And you've probably heard the story. The shepherd has 100 sheep, but one sheep gets away. And what does the heart of the shepherd do? It leaves the 100 and goes and searches for the one that's missing. And he doesn't rest or give up until he finds it. You are the one. I am that one sheep That was the joy in Jesus' heart when he endured this cross. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross. It's amazing what you can endure when you have a vision, when you have a reason to go through. Whenever mankind was at its worst, Jesus was at his best. Right? When they mocked him, when they hated him, when they insulted his Father, he looked up and said, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. When he had a million reasons to go a different way, he stayed on the cross. This God in the flesh finished his purpose, his reason. And it ends with his final breath as he whispers, it is finished. Into your hands I commit my spirit. And he gave his life for the joy set before him, for you and for me. He did it for the joy. We are that joy. He did it for you. You are that joy. And then things go dark. The ground shakes, there's earthquakes, and everyone is trembling and wondering what's going on here. It's a scary moment. The veil rips in the temple. And everyone who thought this was the Messiah, right, is going through depression and fear and anxiety for their lives. They're devastated. We have no hope. He was our dream, everything. We rolled all the dice on him. And then Saturday comes, and again, there's only more questions as the weight of what transpired the previous day just beats them down. Wondering how they're going to even show their faces again. If a little girl can recognize us, then it's not going to be long before other people are able to recognize us. Sunday afternoon comes, Saturday afternoon comes, Saturday night comes, and still just pain and fear. But then Sunday morning comes. And it's amazing how the world can change in just a few days, right, when God is involved. And a couple of ladies who went out to the tomb to offer their spices and prepare the body for burial, they noticed that the stone had been rolled away and that the tomb was empty. Jesus was not there. He was risen from the dead, and because of his perfect work, death was conquered. Satan was crushed under his feet, and there's no longer the power of death or hell or the grave to hold us back any longer. Because of his work, our sins can be forgiven. What was it that drove Jesus to endure suffering? It was the joy set before him. It was amazing what he can endure when he had a reason. It's amazing what we can endure when we have a reason. And the most meaningful times in life often follow the most difficult ones, the difficult trials. And then here we are, right, with every voice in our head, with reason after reason on why it will never happen, or you're just wasting your time, it will never work, give up. We hold on to the one reason. Jesus says all things are possible with God. He is risen. He is risen. And when everything else says give up, we hang on. For the joy, if he did it for us, then we will hang on for him. How did Jesus hang on, right? He knew that it takes a death to have a resurrection. He knew that it takes pain to have progress. He knew that it takes a struggle to have a story worth telling. And often the greatest blessings are just on the other side of the greatest trials. Sometimes you have to endure the worst to experience the best. Your enemy will give you a million reasons to walk away, and all you need is one good one to stay. And if I was enough for Jesus, then Jesus is enough for me. If you were enough for Jesus, then Jesus is enough for you. There's something that you may be here and you're ready to quit on. But our Savior never quit on you, and he will give you what it takes to endure through the trials to see the blessing on the other side. And how did Jesus endure? Again, in Hebrews, it says, For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning the shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners. Why? So that I will not grow weary and lose heart. Because of what Jesus did, you will not grow weary and lose heart. You will not give up when everything around you wants you to. You will continue to forgive when it would be easier just to retaliate. You were enough for Jesus. Therefore, he is enough for you. For the joy set before him, and you were that joy. Because of his faithfulness, the tomb is now empty, and we get to celebrate life in Christ. Because whom the Son sets free is free indeed. He didn't come for the righteous, remember? He came for the sinners. He came for someone like you and like me. Because your enemy will give you a million reasons to walk away, and all you need is one good reason to stay. I'm going to ask Brian to come up and kind of just play that in the background and sing it. I wonder if you might pull out your phones. One of the things that I find most impactful is when we as a group can begin to share with each other. And we've set up this tool to be able to say, man, if you're here this morning, what are the reasons that you feel like giving up for? And the reality is when you see one from someone in this room, then you begin to kind of realize, man, I'm not alone in this struggle. So what we'd like to do is just for a couple minutes is participate in this practice of humbly just admitting, God, this is what I come here with this morning. Here are the million reasons that I feel like giving up. And I wonder if you might just, in a couple minutes, take a moment, if the instructions will come up on the screen there. They may not. So what we're going to do is we'll just close in prayer here this morning. As any one of those millions of reasons come to mind, that you would say, this is why I feel like giving up. This is why I want to throw in the towel. The message here is this morning for you. You were that one good reason for Jesus. And this morning, he wants to be that one good reason for you. But the reality is we can't allow Jesus to work in these reasons if we can't be honest and open about them. So I'm just going to have Brian sing through this chorus a couple times, and as he does, I'm just going to ask you just to humbly between you and God, just say verbally, if you can, or in your heart, just confess these reasons that have allowed the walls to be built up in your heart where you feel like giving up. And let the Holy Spirit just do a work as you confess those things and allow him to come in and to move and to work and be the one good reason in those areas this morning.
I bow down to pray. I try to make the worst seem better. Lord, show me the way to cut through all this worn down leather. I've got 100 million reasons to walk away, but baby, I just need one good one. I bow down to pray. I try to make the worst seem better. Lord, show me the way to cut through all this worn out leather. I've got 100 million reasons to walk away, but baby, I just need one good one. Baby, won't you be that good one? I bow down to to pray. I try to make the worst seem better. Lord, show me the way to cut through all this worn out leather. I've got 100 million reasons to walk away, but baby, I just need one good one, good one. Tell me that you'll be that good one, good one. Baby, won't you be that good one to stay?
God, we just pray that you would take every single one of these reasons that we've confessed before you here this morning. God, that through your power that only you can do, through the work that you can only do, you would begin to bring new life. God, that the same tomb that was empty would be the story of our lives as our spirit is free from the chains that have been holding us back and the reasons that have been wanting to bring us down, and from this enemy that is seeking to destroy us. God, continue to do the work in our hearts here this morning for all these reasons. And maybe you're here this morning and for the first time this idea of a relationship with Jesus is something that is new to you, or he would want to be involved with the every minute aspects of your life, where you would be that one reason for him, where he would endure all of these things, and you want to have this relationship with him that is intimate and daily, and not just once a week on a Sunday morning, but in every moment. And for you here, the call this morning is just a confession of surrender. There's no magic words, but in your heart, if you would just pray something like this, but in your own words to him: God, this morning I want to surrender the control of my life. This morning I want to engage in this personal relationship with you that involves when I wake up to when I go to bed, with every thought of my mind, that I would allow you to be in control. I want you to be in the driver's seat. I want to submit my heart's desires to the things that I know you want and desire for me. I want to submit my life to the purpose that I know that you created me for. Because for the first time, I see that I was made and created for a purpose, and I have an enemy who wants to keep me from that. But this morning, I'm consciously deciding and confessing to you, I want to be in on what you have for me. God, I thank you so much for the new life that has happened here this morning, for the one reason that you have given us to work through, to endure the trials, and the same drive that allowed you to endure what you did. May it continue to drive us to endure the broken relationships, the broken promises, the broken hopes and dreams, so that we can be for each other who you need us to be, so we can be for our community who you need the community for us to be. And as you raise us up as a voice to be in the city, a voice of change and a voice of new direction, where it's not about rules and regulations and do's and don'ts, but it's about this relationship, this intimate relationship that we can have, and that Eastwood can have, and that Syracuse can have. May this Easter be the worst thought of any kind of April Fool's joke, but of new life. The very opposite. April wisdom. So we thank you. We thank you that you're involved in a part of our lives and what you're going to do and what you've already done here this morning. Amen. If there's something specific that maybe you feel like you're going through or that you need prayer for, Stephen is going to be up here and I'll be up here, and we'd love to pray for you or with you, and whatever it is, and maybe some of these reasons you just want to confess or talk about. There's all sorts of yummy snacks and goodies in the cafe. They encourage you to hang out and socialize, and then we'll let you know here shortly when the flashlight egg hunt will begin, and the kids can have a good time. There will be an ID check, so adults, you cannot participate. But we would love to have you watch that, all right? Love you guys. Have a great rest of your Easter, and we'll see you next week as we continue our series.